Okay, so welcome to Module 3 of IELTS Grammar course, and today we're going to look at articles. So something that a very common mistake for many of you. So we're going to look at what these are, look at the rules, and how we can improve our use of articles. So what will we do in this lesson? We're going to look at what articles are, why are they a problem, overall strategy. We're going to use logic in order to help us improve our use of articles. And then we're going to look at individual rules because there are quite a few rules. And I'm also going to give you a checklist because I was thinking of what is an easy way for you guys to be able to check your writing after you finish. So after you finish your writing, it's a great time to check articles, and it's just really easy. If you're using a pen or pencil, you can just delete the article if you have to delete it, or add it in. It's really easy to edit your articles after, and they make a huge difference because they're very prevalent. So I'm going to give you a checklist of just some things to think about while you are editing at the end. So, articles are the little words that go before nouns in a sentence. So, when you are writing a sentence, when you know what a noun is, I'm not going to tell you what a noun is, but you should know what that is. And before a noun, you will have an article, or you will not have an article. So, you might have a or an, you might have the, or you might have zero article. When I'm talking about zero article, I'm talking about no article. So, before a noun, there's just nothing. And so these are the four things that you might see before a noun: a, an, the, or zero article. And the terminology is quite important because one of the most confusing things about English grammar, or grammar in any language, is you have to learn all this new terminology. And I think half the battle is just understanding the terminology, and then you can really get into it and really start to learn it properly. When you hear me talking about indefinite articles, I'm talking about a or an. When I'm talking about definite articles, I'm talking about the. All right, so pretty simple, but that's what I'm talking about. So why are articles a problem? The most important thing to know is they are in nearly every English sentence. Every English sentence will normally have a noun in it. That means it will normally have an article or no article, an indefinite article, a definite article. So if you do not know how to use articles properly, you are going to have problems in nearly every sentence. If you have problems in nearly every sentence, you are going to get a low mark because, again, we are aiming for error-free sentences. There are so many different rules. So I'm going to give you kind of a shortcut when we're talking about the checklist. So the checklist is my attempt to simplify the complex, to make it as simple as possible. But there are a huge number of rules that you have to learn. And what I've also done is I've distilled it down to the most essential rules. So only the rules that come up regularly in an IELTS Task 1 or Task 2 paper. And what I've also done is I have prioritized, showed you the most common rules and made it a lot simpler in that way. Many languages don't use them at all. So, for example, if you're a Russian speaker, you don't have articles, so it's quite difficult. They are not essential for communication. So I can mess up all of my articles. If I was learning, imagine, I'm a Russian speaker and I learn English and I get all of my articles wrong. It doesn't really matter for communication because they're not essential for conveying meaning. So that is a good thing because it means that you can kind of be lazy about them and get away with them. But it's also a very bad thing because things that are not essential for communication, essential for meaning, often people will forgive you. They won't. It's not a big problem. So if something's not a big problem, the error, even though you're making it, tends to keep going on and on and on. So it's kind of a bad thing for IELTS because they will pick up on those. So let's look at an overall strategy. I would suggest you use this strategy, but you might think that you have a better strategy. But I would try to learn the rules and learn the checklist and all of the things that I'm going to give you them. And then I would try and use them as innately as possible in the real test when you're first writing. The reason why I'm saying try and use them innately, which it means naturally, is because there are going to be so many nouns. I do not think that it is a good idea to stop before every single noun and think, okay, let's go through a checklist. What's going to happen? You're going to run out of time. I think that you should do the hard work first, and you should try and learn them and practice and try and do all the hard work before the test. But then when you are in the test, don't think about them too much. Obviously be aware of them, but don't think about them too much while you are writing. And then at the end, you can apply the logic and the checklist when you're doing the checking at the end. I think that's an effective strategy. Let me know if you can think of a better strategy, or it doesn't suit you, or something like that. Don't just be negative and be like, I don't like this, and then not think of an alternative. But if you have a better alternative, let me know. But I think this is a very effective strategy. Okay, so a lot of you like to think visually, and a lot of you like to think logically. So I just thought I'd make this little chart, which might help you. The checklist, you're also going to need the checklist that we're going to give you in a moment, but this is a good way to think about it. So do I need an article before this noun? If you don't, zero article, nothing. If yes, is it a definite article? In that case, it will be the. Or is it an indefinite article? In that case, it will be a or an. It will only be an if there is a vowel sound in the first part of the noun starts with a vowel sound, so a, e, I, o, u sound. Okay, so what are the rules, and what should we think about the rules? So first of all, we could spend hours going over all the rules of articles, and I'm not going to do that. All right, similar to complex sentences, we could study this for years. Obviously, we're not going to be able to do that. I'm going to look at the rules that affect you the most. So what I've done is I've looked at all of the rules of articles, and I've distilled it down into the essentials. A lot of this course is going to be like that. By essentials, I don't mean minimizing it to the point where it's easy, or minimizing it to the point where you're only learning half of it. I mean the minimum effective dose. So so that you do have to do a lot of learning, but really just talking about the essential things. We will use a checklist to establish if we need an article or not, and which articles to use. So we'll look at that in a moment. So common rules and less common rules. So I was thinking about how to make this as easy as possible, and to simplify it. And what I've done is I looked at all of the rules, and then I looked at lots and lots of sample essays, and I thought, which are the 3 or 4 most common rules, the ones that students, if they really knew those rules, and if they had those at the top of their mind when they were doing the test, that it would make the biggest impact. And then what are also some less common rules that we can't forget about? They're important, but they just don't come up as often. So we definitely need to learn them. But what I'm going to do is show you the most common rules, which are specific or general, familiar or unfamiliar, common ground or no common ground, generalities. If you were to only look at these 4 common rules, you would be able to get most of your articles correct. But we're not aiming for 50%. We're aiming for closer to 100%. So you also have to think about less common rules. A good way to think about articles is to always think about the most common rules first, and then the less common rules. So think about the 4 common rules first, and they will look after most of your article problems. Then if that doesn't cover it, then you could think about the less common rules. You can also flip it around. What you can do is you can think of the less common rules first, and if something applies to that common rule, for example, time and quantity. If it was about time and quantity, then it would be pretty easy to identify that, and you're like, okay, it's about time and quantity, I'm going to think about that, and then you don't have to think about anything else. So either one of those strategies would be effective. This might sound a little bit confusing at the moment. Let's look at the common rules and the less common rules, and then it will become a little bit easier to think about. So the first one, and I think this is the most important one, I think this covers most things. Is it specific or is it general? In my classes, when I used to teach grammar in face-to-face classes, this would be where I'd always start with pre-intermediate students, students just starting to learn articles. And what I normally did was I just taught them this. I didn't get into all of the other little specific rules. You should, if you're hoping to get a 7 or above. But the reason why I did that was because it just covers so many things. This is the most important general rule. We use the when we're talking about something specific. In comparison, we use a or an, the indefinite article, when talking about something more general. And I think this is also, if you think about it, definite, specific. Indefinite, not definite, more general. So I'd like to take an IELTS course with you, Chris, versus I'd like to talk to you about the IELTS course, Chris. So the context is completely different for these two sentences. These two sentences are very, very similar, but they're about completely different situations. The first one, they're talking generally. So they probably know that I have an IELTS course, but they don't know which one they want to do, and they don't have any details on it at all. It's very general. So they say, I'd like to take an IELTS course with you, Chris. This person, I'd like to talk to you about the IELTS course, Chris. So they probably are thinking about the VIP course or the writing course or the grammar course, a very specific course out of a suite of different courses. So the next thing that my answer to this person would be, sure, let's join the grammar course. Let's join the VIP course. We already know what we're talking about. We're talking about a specific thing. And you can apply this to so many different things, this specific and general rule. The second thing is similar, very, very similar. Unfamiliar and familiar. If you're talking about something that you're unfamiliar with, you're more likely to use an indefinite article. There's been an accident. He's been depressed since the accident. So there's been an accident. An accident has happened. There's been a car crash or a motorbike crash or a bike crash or something like that. But I'm not familiar with it. I don't have any details. I just know that there's been a crash. I don't know who has been involved. I don't really know anything. Again, general. I have general information about it, but I don't have specific information about it. He's been depressed since the accident. So I know what happened, who was involved, the date of what happened, what the result of it. I know all the details because I'm talking about the accident, something that I'm familiar with. And again, very specific. All right, so definite article, I'm talking about something that I definitely know about. I'm very familiar with it. An accident, I'm not familiar with it, so I'm going to use an indefinite article. But again, very similar to specific and general. You can also say that this is very similar to specific general rule. So again, just reiterating that for you. Many teachers just talk about these together. The specific, general, unfamiliar, familiar. I thought I would unpack it a little bit for you, just to make it clearer. Common ground. When you're talking about something you both know about, you're more likely to use a definite article. So again, if you both know about something, you're familiar with it, it's specific, again, very similar. What was the score in the match last night? Are you going to watch a match this weekend? All right, so the first one, there's common ground. All right, the second one, there is no common ground. And again, specific, familiar, common ground, all very, very similar. Again, this is similar to the specific/general rule or the familiar/unfamiliar rules. So again, definite is specific, talking about something you're familiar with or you have common ground about. Generalities. When someone is talking about something general or routine, we're more likely to use no article. Football matches are safer than they were in the past. All right, so we're not saying the football matches or our football matches. We're just talking generally about things. Again, this is similar to the previous ones. Okay, so those are when I talked about common rules and less common rules. Specific in general, that's a common rule. Unfamiliar, familiar, common rule. Common ground, common rule. Generalities, common rule. If you just learned those ones and you really focused on those ones, you probably get 50% of your articles or more correct. Again, we're not aiming for 50%. We're not aiming for 100% because that's impossible. But we're aiming as close to 100% as possible. So now that we've looked at the common rules, let's look at the more specific, the less common rules. But these are important. So occupations. When naming occupations, you're more likely to use an indefinite article. I'm currently a student, but one day I hope to be a doctor. Okay, so if you, in the test, you saw an occupation, you're more likely to use the indefinite article, all right? So that's an example of a less common rule, and when you see that, you're like, okay, I know what this rule is, let's do it. Will you be able to learn the rules immediately? No, but practice activities and practice will help you internalize these. Only one of something. So if there is only one of something, you're more likely to use the definite article. Again, definite, specific, only one of something, very, very specific. The initiative to help homeless people failed. All right, so there's only one initiative, so we're more likely to use the specific definite article. So the benefits of fasting are significant. The streets of London are lined with homeless people. All right, so if you get the blank of something, it's more likely to be the definite article. Again, very specific. We're talking about specific things, definite, that's more likely to happen there. So you probably are seeing a pattern here. When things are more definite, when things are more specific, you're more likely to use the. When things are more general, unspecific, more likely to use the indefinite article. So comparatives with same and superlatives, you're more likely to use the definite article when using comparatives and superlatives. Belfast is the biggest city in Northern Ireland. Dublin is not the same size as Belfast. So the biggest city is the noun phrase there, the biggest city. The same size, the same size. Again, it's specific, all right, it's definite. Proper nouns have definite articles. Things like the Andes, the Atlantic Ocean, the Sahara Desert. So mountain ranges, oceans, deserts, things like that are proper nouns. Why are they proper nouns? You probably know this already. The Andes, specific mountain range. The Atlantic Ocean, specific ocean. Sahara Desert, so it's not the Gobi Desert, it's not the... I don't know many deserts, to be honest, but it's a very specific desert, okay? So again, when the specific general rule is covering so many different things. Part of an institution. We do not use articles when talking about being part of an institution. I go to church every Sunday. Church is an institution. I went to university last year. University is an institution. So again, zero article for this. So this is quite a specific rule. So this is just something that you'll have to learn, but it's something that if you see this in the test or you start to write about it in the test, then it's easier to remember this and easier to use no article. Home, work, bed. We do not normally use articles when talking about these. I went home after work and went to bed. All right, so if you just remember that sentence, I went home after work and went to bed, that should help you remember that home, work, bed, zero articles. So a lot of people, a lot of you say the home and the work, and especially work. Work is work. We do not use any articles there. So, how are you going to learn all of these? Learning long lists might work for some people, but you're unlikely to internalize them and use them effectively in the real test. So, I don't think that a good way to learn these is just to read these rules every day for 6 weeks. Like you could do that, but it would be a bit of a waste of your time. If that's your style of learning, maybe do that. But for most people, just reading a list of articles and reading a list of rules is not really going to help you use them effectively. Here's a better way if you're struggling with articles. When reading, underline any articles you're unsure of. If you really need to work on articles, underline all of them. Think about why they are correct and reference the rules. Try to use them as innately as possible when writing or speaking, and proofread your writing and try to correct your use of articles with reference to the rules and the checklist that I'm about to give you. So you could do this for any grammar point, but when you have learned the rules, you're obviously going to practice, but you should be reading in English every day or listening to English every day. And if you hear articles and you think it's strange or you don't understand it, underline it or stop it and think about it, and then think about the rules. So if you, for example, somebody said, I go to work at 8 a.m. And you said, why is it not the work? And then you would think about the rules and then think about this lesson and say, okay, yeah, when talking about work or bed or home, there's no article. Okay, I understand that. And what you're doing is you're connecting the dots and you're connecting neurons in your brain and learning it that way rather than, just learning lists. So here's the checklist that I'm going to give you. First of all, is something specific or general? Ask yourself that. Then, is something I'm familiar with or have common ground with? Is this a generality? Is this something that one of the other rules apply to? So what you're doing is the first 3 questions are covering the 4 common things. That should satisfy most articles. If you're familiar with these 3 things, that should help you with most things. But then you also need to think about, is it an occupation? Is it only one of something? Is it a comparative? Is it a superlative? Or is it a proper noun? Or, if it's one of these things, then you might have to double check it. But if it's not one of these things, then you won't have to worry about that. Now, will you have a list? Will you have a checklist beside you in the IELTS test? Of course you won't. So many of you are thinking, this is, this is not going to be any use to me. But kind of like the structures that I give you on the writing test or the strategies that I give you for the reading test, you're not going to be able to just look at this once. What you do is when you're practicing your articles and when you're thinking about them and when you're correcting them and when you get feedback, always think about this checklist until it becomes natural, until it becomes innate. So it's kind of like learning how to drive a car or ride a bike or tie your shoelaces. At first you have to really think about what you're doing, but then as you get used to it and as you do it again and again, it becomes habit and you won't even have to think about it. If you ask native English speakers about articles, they don't know anything about articles because they use them naturally. They use them innately. They don't know these rules. 99% of native English speakers have no idea what these rules are, but they just have done it so many times since they were a child that they're 100% right. Most of them are 100% right all the time, and so that's kind of the place where you want to go. So here's an exercise for you. What I've done is I have put a space. So what I'd like you to do is I would like you to pause the video. Don't cheat. The answer is at the end of the video. But just pause the video. And what I'd like you to do is apply this checklist to this. Okay? So you could open this up in a new window or make a note of this, or it's just something that will allow you to apply the checklist. If you see the checklist and you think that's just too much work and that's not going to work, just give it a chance, apply it here, think about what you're doing, and then you should get them all correct. If you get 1 or 2 incorrect, look at the checklist again and think about why you got them wrong. What did you not understand about the checklist? So try that, pause the video, apply the checklist. I'm going to give you a few minutes or a few seconds so that you don't cheat. So I'm going to move on to the answers. Please do try this. It's really, really important that you do if you want to improve. So here are the answers. Every day I drive to the city centre. There are always traffic jams during rush hour. I usually buy petrol, a packet of cigarettes, and an English muffin in the petrol station on my way to work. On my way home, I stop off at the biggest swimming pool in Northern Ireland for a swim. Okay, so if you got them all correct, well done. If you didn't get some of them, if some of them are incorrect, go back to checklist and think about why it is one way or the other. The worst thing that you can do when learning anything, and a lot of you do this, is just like, I got it wrong, I'm terrible, I'll never be able to do this, I'm going to cry, and all of those things. Like, that's not very helpful. What you can do instead is like, okay, I got that wrong. There's a very specific reason why I got that wrong, and it's nothing to do with my intelligence. It's nothing to do with how good I am at languages. It's just a very specific, logical reason why I got it wrong. Find out what that logical reason is, fix it, and you'll do much better the next time. So what did we learn in this lesson? What are articles? Why are they a problem? An overall strategy, using logic to help you think about them. Looking at the rules, so looking at the most common rules and then more specific rules, and a checklist to help us apply it to any scenario. Articles are the type of thing, I think, I get the feeling I'm going to say this at the end of every video, you're not going to get them immediately, but the practice questions will help you. So make sure you do the practice questions and then correct the practice questions and then apply it to your writing, and you will improve over time. So next module, plurals. See you then. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.